Welcome to Formula One and Son,
Hi.
podcast where I sit here with my son Oscar and we talk about Formula One issues.
And strictly, this podcast is only for Formula One fans. So if you're not a Formula One fan,
Then we welcome you anyway, and we hope you become a Formula One fan. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different topics. I thought we'd cover the pre-season testing and get thoughts on that, gossips, rumours, what we're hearing about the place, who's looking good, who's looking bad. And then I thought we could preview the Australian Grand Prix coming up in about a week's time and see what we're looking forward to. Oscar, what was your big takeaway from pre-season testing?
Well, I think Ferrari is looking pretty good, but Mercedes look pretty strong too. So I think it'll be a pretty good battle in contender for the
Where do you see Red Bull at in that grouping?
I think Red Bull might be a little bit behind. But not too far behind. I think the Honda engine might be a little stronger this year.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought about last year is people said, oh, well, the Honda didn't break down too much last year when Toro Rosso were using it.
Yeah.
However, Toro Rosso were changing their Honda engine about, every 5 laps getting lots of penalties. So they didn't break down, but they used a lot of engines.
Well, who knows? Maybe they employ like a sear or something.
So I guess one thing we don't know during testing is, did they change the Honda engine every night? Like, did they get into the garage, put a fresh unit in every day so that they could ensure reliability? Don't know. I think it's an interesting
never will.
Yeah, but otherwise it did look impressively reliable, particularly even with Toro Rosso and Honda. I think they both did a lot of laps.
Yeah.
Mercedes had a completely different aero package in week 2 compared to week 1. What do you think that's about?
Well, I think that they looked a little stronger in week 2 from what I saw. But yeah, anything you want to add?
No. I heard some rumor that they're actually going to have 2 aero packages this year for different setups. So they're going to have one aero package for certain tracks, presumably maybe a low downforce setup and a higher downforce setup. I've only heard that from one source, so I'm kind of dismissing it. It seems like dividing your resources, even for a team like Mercedes who's got mega bucks, would probably be a bad idea.
Yeah, do you think that they would get penalized if they did decide to do that every time they decided to change aero packages?
No, I don't. No, you can change parts. As long as the parts are legal, you can do whatever you want, right? I mean, teams bring upgrades every weekend. So it's no different to that, really. So and they have different, they'll talk about the Monaco setup or the Monza rear wing where it's really low down.
I played F1 2018, so I know this stuff.
So the low downforce. So, yeah. So we'll see. Now, if we go back a little bit further in the grid, obviously, as you say, Ferrari just seemed to dominate.
Aside from terrible, though.
Yeah, that matte orange, as I like to call it. It's not really red, is it?
I think 1 in every 3 times I see a Ferrari on screen, I'm going to think it's a McLaren.
It's not that orange, but I agree. I don't like it. Look, I'm colourblind, so I don't know if I'm the best person to judge
You're not orange
the livery. No, that's true. On the Ferrari livery, while we're talking about that, apparently they're not going to run the Mission Winnow logo in Australia because it's associated with Philip Morris, the tobacco company, and so Australia, they've banned it. They can't have the tobacco, even though it's Mission Winnow loosely affiliated. So that'll be interesting. So I don't know if they're going to put something else in that spot where they've got that black logo or run it bare.
Blank. Yeah. If they left it blank, it probably, I don't know. They'll probably, I think they'd probably get a bit of hate from this company that you're talking about if they just replaced them for this 1 week.
Yeah, well, I think they just have to. Now, what did you think of Charles Leclerc? His first running with Ferrari seemed pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, opposed to Pierre Gasly, who crashed in his running. Twice.
Look, I think, that's not going to fill Pierre with confidence. Obviously he only got the call up because Daniel Ricciardo moved to Renault. But that's fine. I mean, that happens. Daniel Ricciardo only got the call up because Mark Webber retired. It hurt them in that back end of that second week. He obviously did a lot of damage to that Red Bull.
Yeah.
I think Verstappen went out the next day and only did a few laps because the gearbox was effectively broken.
I think that whole week was kind of damaged because of that.
Well, no, it was only the last 2 days, I think. But so Gasly, a little bit of a bad start. I guess if you're going to crash, probably better do it in testing than in a race.
Wow.
But look, okay, so that's probably a good segue into thinking about the the next team's down, and it seems to me the consensus is the next two teams fighting for that kind of fourth position are Haas and Renault.
Yeah.
Looking at Renault first, so the word on the street with Renault looked like they didn't have a lot of spare parts with them, so that meant that they had to be a little bit cautious with their running, make sure that Daniel and Nico weren't pushing the cars to its absolute limits, because if they had a crash like Gasly, then that would have really limited their running time because they didn't have the spare parts spring. Otherwise, I found it really hard to judge their performance. They seem to be, I think they pulled out some pretty quick laps. I think Nico topped a few days. Always seemed to me that Nico got more laps in than Daniel. He kind of got the rub of the bad luck. But they looked pretty evenly matched too, I thought. I like the look of the car, I like that black and yellow livery. But what do you think of the Renaults?
Well, I think that the Renaults are looking pretty good, and contrary to what you said before, like you need to add Racing Point now looks pretty contending, and we don't even know. McLaren might even be added into the mix. I'm hoping.
I think you're being a bit optimistic. What I heard about Racing Point is, you remember last year they had all the issues with the financials when they were forced India.
Yeah.
They were forced into administration, and then they, of course, Lance Stroll's dad, with a group, has then bought that the team.
Yeah.
And so through the middle of last year, they were basically cut off from funding. So by the time that they got their funding sorted out, they're now just getting their parts online. So apparently they bought a pretty vanilla basic car to testing. Certainly not their Melbourne spec car as they come to speed. So I think they might start slow and then really improve. And we know, everyone says this, but bang for buck, Force India now, Racing Point, have always been able to do a lot. So look, I don't think they'll be there in Melbourne, but hopefully through the year they improve.
Yeah, but I have heard that in the 2018 season, if you added up all the points from when they were Racing Point Force India and Sahara Force India, they would have come just after Renault in the Constructors' Championship.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. The other team in that mix there is Haas. Obviously, they got they're kind of the Ferrari kind of B spec car, or the 2018 Ferrari car. I think they're really interesting. They had probably what made it hard to judge their performance. They had a lot of reliability issues. So they broke down 3-4 times through testing at least. But otherwise the car looked pretty stable. I think they'll be right up there. Look, you remember last year, I mean, obviously they didn't they came fifth in the championship last year, I think, after Renault. And if they'd collected those points in Melbourne that they lost, remember last year's Melbourne race? Yeah. They were going really well, and both cars DNF'd, and that really hurt them. They never recovered after that. That was going to be a huge result for them. So, yeah, look, I'm looking forward to that kind of front of the mid-tier battle. I guess, look, a little bit of bias. I'm a Daniel Ricciardo fan. New listeners, which will be everyone, can tell that Oscar and I are Australians. We don't live in Australia, but we're Australian. So
Aussie.
So by default, Daniel Ricciardo fans. But I'm looking forward to seeing the Renault. They're on that journey towards the top. I'd be satisfied if they can occasionally trouble Red Bull or whoever's going to be the third team, which I assume will be Red Bull, might be Mercedes. We'll see. I'd be happy if Renault can once in a while trouble a podium. That'd be great. Don't know. And hopefully Haas are not troubling Renault too much, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Further down the grid,
McLaren. I think we should talk
McLaren.
About
Sure.
McLaren.
What do you think about McLaren?
I think that they are definitely improving, because last year they did do well. That might have just been Fernando Alonso. Could have been, because Stoffel the Waffle didn't do very well. But I think that their car is definitely improving. The Renault engine might have gotten a bit better this year. I don't really know. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
in contending to the other cars.
They say that Renault engine's got another 30 kilowatts or something. And if that's true, that's worth a fair bit of time. And there's some rule of thumb about that.
Lando Norris won the F2 Drivers' Championship. So.
Lando's going to be a good driver. Yeah. Carlos Sainz is well proven.
As Fernando Alonso demonstrated, a good driver means everything.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, Fernando really flattered the McLaren last year. It really didn't deserve to be up where he put it quite often. Yeah. He also capitalised on other teams' mistakes. A shame about Stoffel Van Dorn. Hopefully he has a good potential. He's in Formula E this season. Yeah. So hopefully he has a good Formula E season. I think he had potential, but he just didn't have that I don't know, we'd say have that mongrel about him that kind of, do anything, desire.
I think F1 might bring him back, though, eventually.
We'll see. Fernando, of course, made an appearance at testing. There was some talk that he bought his gear and might take the car out for a spin. I think we will see Fernando in a testing session this year. He's obviously doing his Indy 500 prep and all that kind of stuff, so we'll see. Look, I thought the McLaren was really hard to judge. Hopefully they've got a good base from which to work from. What did you think about this? I was going to say Sauber. What did you think about Alfa Romeo?
I think that they're looking very fast. They looked pretty stable. Their livery hasn't changed really, so that's not great.
Looks cool.
It looks cool, but on top of that, they have two pretty good drivers this year. So Kimi Räikkönen, who, as you all know, has a lot of experience, and before Formula One was in Formula Renault, and he made a pretty big jump from there. So he has a lot of experience, and he's a pretty good driver.
He's a world champion, right?
Yeah. And Giovinazzi also seems to be a pretty good driver, obviously, to get promoted to F1.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about Giovinazzi. I'm looking forward to seeing him drive. There's obviously a number of rookies this year on the grid. You got George Russell, Lando Norris, who you mentioned at McLaren, Albon, and Giovinazzi. And am I missing anyone else?
Russell, did you say?
Yeah, I said Russell. So so I think that's going to be interesting. Look, for me, I really like the Alpha. They've got that really different front wing concept to everyone else. Alfa Romeo, I think that different front wing, we'll see how that plays out. They started out of the gates in week one in testing really strong, but I think they started very close to their potential and then didn't develop a whole lot. So it's gonna be interesting. And Kimi seems to like the car. I think he just enjoys not having to deal with the Ferrari politics anymore. Yeah. So he's kind of a rejuvenated guy.
And he's number one driver.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Who haven't we talked about?
Toro Rosso.
Oh yeah, Toro Rosso. What do we say about them? Well, so they've got the torpedo back. Daniel Kvyat, he's obviously got part cat DNA because he's got 9 lives, that guy, in Formula One. Look, obviously Toro Rosso, Red Bull, back to Toro Rosso, out of Formula One, back into Toro Rosso.
He obviously has a lot of experience, but not sure how great of a driver he is. We'll see.
Look, what struck me when Daniel Kvyat kind of really got kicked out of Red Bull and then Toro Rosso, he almost just mentally broke down. You saw him in a lot of those interviews. It looked like he was about to cry. So hopefully he's worked on that kind of mental strength. I think he's got the talent.
What has he been doing since Formula One?
He was a Ferrari test driver, I think. Wasn't he doing Ferrari sim work, I think? So, so I think as long as he doesn't have some bad fortune in the early days and maybe gets a few good results, I think that'll boost his confidence and hopefully we see the resurgence. If he has some bad luck early, I think that's going to test his mental resilience. And of course now in that team is also Albon.
Albon, I think.
And I think Albon's interesting. He, I think again has a good F2 pedigree. He's a kind of interesting personality. He seems like quite chilled out and honest.
I like that in a Formula
sometimes that makes you think he doesn't have the hunger. A bit like Stoffel Van Dorn seemed like a nice guy, but didn't seem like he had the eye of the tiger.
I think he does.
Yeah, actually. I hope so.
I can kind of see it.
So we'll see. Now, finally, of course.
Also, on one last thing about Toro Rosso. I think Red Bull said at one point that they would use Toro Rosso for all of their testing and development and their experimental team. So I think that might put them behind for this year.
Toro Rosso's always been like that. I think they've got more of the Red Bull components now. I think they've got the whole gearbox and rear suspension assembly, if I remember correctly. So, look, we'll see where Toro Rosso. Again, they looked pretty good early in testing, but I think faded a little bit.
And they didn't change their livery at all. So
no, but they never do. That's
same as
Red Bull treat Formula One as a marketing exercise, so they want to make sure that branding's really prominent. That's fair enough. I mean, that's what they're in it for. Okay, so probably I think the only team we haven't now talked about is Williams. Williams is a sad story, isn't it? Late to testing, everyone knows that by now. Paddy Lowe, their technical director, just announced in the last couple of days that he's taking a leave of absence for personal reasons, which sounds a lot like being fired because you did a bad job of delivering. Paddy was at Mercedes in their early championship days. Look, who knows what's going on really at Williams.
Has just really been down there. I watched some old 2015, 2014 races on F1 TV, and like they were so good.
Oh,
Like I have to say, like Massa won races in Williams, but they just like went bad.
I think
And
Pastor Maldonado won a race in Williams, didn't he, back in the day? Yeah.
I definitely think that Williams has the potential. I guess they need a better director for a team, but they also, I think, just like need a bit of more development. But give it a couple years, maybe 2021,
I mean,
the year of new rules.
Yeah, I guess you could hope for that
opportunity.
Regulation. Look, I guess what we've got to hope for is that they've got enough of a base car that they can develop from it. I think last year that was a problem. The car was kind of undevelopable, if that's a word. So, look, we'll see where they end up. Obviously, a lot going on in that team. You know, all the history, blah blah, about Williams. Look, I feel bad for George Russell and Kubica, Robert Kubica. Kubica obviously has raced in F1 and been successful, coming back now from that injury. George Russell, great talent from F2, but to go from being top of the heap in F2 to and you get for your Formula One break. I sometimes wonder, would you rather be winning F2 or in the worst team in F1? I guess most people say being in F1 is better.
F1 is just a better experience.
Yeah, but not when you lose. And they won't. It looks like they won't just be losing. They'll be not even competing with the back of the field. Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, that was preseason testing.
Well,
did we forget a team?
Like two.
Which, okay.
Mercedes and Racing Point.
We talked about Racing Point.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, and Mercedes we mentioned briefly, but go ahead. We talked about their dual packages and.
Well, yeah, that's true. Mercedes, I just like Bottas. What do you think? Like, will he still be wingman? Will he still be wingman, or maybe have a bit more human rights?
Yeah, look, I think Mercedes are pretty smart. If you think about it, Mercedes make a determination at some point. Who's going to win the championship? Let's back that horse. They did that with Lewis after a set number of races last year. And look, frankly, Lewis just dominates Valtteri. Lewis would probably dominate just about anyone on the grid, except for maybe Alonso back in the day.
Yeah.
And even then he did. So look, Valtteri's got to prove himself, and then I think Mercedes will give him an equal chance.
Yeah, well, if he doesn't perform, though, we all know, like, what would happen next year. If you don't know, Ocon will replace him.
Actually, I wouldn't mind seeing Ocon replace him.
I liked Ocon. So
look, Valtteri, he's got that beard. Has he got that kind of eye of the tiger about him now?
He seems like he's getting a bit old, though.
He's not that old, but I think he's younger than Lewis.
Really?
Yeah. Look,
well, he looks older.
I'm looking forward to it.
Sorry, Valtteri.
I think Valtteri's going to come out firing. If he can get some good performances in, I think we'll see a new Valtteri. Lewis, of course, just absolutely formidable. Just absolutely dominates. So we'll see. But look, what I hope, and it's only because Mercedes are so good, I hope they start the season on the back foot and are definitely behind Ferrari. Give them a chance to collect some points before they commit suicide later in the season, but also hopefully even behind Red Bull, just because I think that'll mix up the season a bit more.
Well, we haven't seen much change since 2016.
And look, Mercedes, everyone talks about sandbagging during testing, are they? Who knows? We'll find out in Melbourne. But yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. We talked about Racing Point.
I think so.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. And we've talked about Williams. So I think we've covered all the teams. Let's look forward now to Melbourne. What are you hoping to see in Melbourne? What's got you excited, Oscar? Like, what's the talking point for you? What do you want to see happen? What do you want to see proven, or what mystery do you want solved from testing?
I think by qualifying, we will all know kind of where the teams stack up. Well,
for sure.
Depending on the conditions. If it's dry, then I guess we'll see how the teams stack up.
Yeah, that's true. If it's raining, we won't know anything.
Then maybe who knows? Maybe in qualifying, it's kind of up to the drivers though. We'll see by maybe a few races in, maybe by around China, where the teams actually stack up.
As you say, everyone always says, you can't tell anything from Melbourne because it's kind of a weird partial road circuit, and and then you can't tell anything in China. They go on. But yeah, I agree. But Australia will give you a good sense. I think what we'll see in Australia, some of the things I'm interested in are some of the team battles. I'm really keen to see how Leclerc does against Vettel.
Yeah, definitely.
That guy's a talent, and I think there's a reasonable good chance he's going to hold some heat to Vettel's feet this season. I think Bottas is still going to get beaten by Lewis.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but Lewis is just too good.
Quick F1 fact, the youngest podium of combined ages could happen this year. Could be Leclerc, Gasly, and I think someone else.
And someone else young. I don't know who.
Yeah, Google it. I don't need to tell you this for you.
And then, of course, I'm really interested to see the Ricciardo-Hulkenberg battle. I've always been a Hulkenberg fan. I'm obviously a massive Ricciardo fan.
Yeah.
I think they're both going to deliver well. Verstappen clearly had the edge on Ricciardo in quali. Will he have the edge? Will Hulkenberg have the edge on Ricciardo in quali? We don't know. But I'm looking forward to seeing that.
The Renault Red Bull battle, I'm interested. We don't really know how the Honda engine will play out.
Yeah, will we see some smoke pouring out the back of a Red Bull or a Toro Rosso once they turn up the wick?
Yeah.
Will Renault actually have a quali mode now? What do they call them? Party modes?
I don't know.
I think that'll be fascinating. Will Williams actually have a car with 4 wheels on it?
No, I think 3's fine.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fascinating...
I'll take my Volkswagen out to compete with the Williams.
So let's end this podcast. Oscar, first one here. We're 20 minutes in. That seems like a good time period.
Yeah.
Predictions for Melbourne.
Leclerc wins.
Oh, I like it. Well, they're going to give me the whole podium.
Okay, Leclerc, Hamilton.
Spicy.
God bless you, fans.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see a Ferrari up on the podium. And honestly, I think it'll be Vettel. I think Vettel will probably win that race. Did he win last year? I think he did, didn't he? Because there was that funny VSC mistake that Mercedes made. And so I think we'll see Vettel up there. Inevitably, I think we'll see Hamilton up there. I think the third person will be really interesting. And if we want to spicy it up, probably Verstappen.
Yeah.
I think, which is actually a bit boring, but hopefully we see all 3 teams or 3 different teams up on the podium.
Maybe even
come
4.
Melbourne.
Well, 4 maybe come China, hopefully by then.
Well, that's it for our first podcast. You're here with Tom and Oscar talking all things Formula One on Formula One and Sun.
As Vettel would say, grazie.